And though we like to imagine Zack and the gang being, friends forever.
Saturday mornings in the late 80s and early 90s had a specific kind of magic. High school looked like the most incredible place on earth. Every teenager had perfect hair, solved every crisis before lunch. And the biggest emergency was whether you'd get asked to the dance. Welcome to Saved by the Bell, the show that premiered in 1989 and convinced an entire generation that being a teenager meant scheme-fueled chaos, where principals were your best friends and time out could literally freeze time. Zach Morris was the blonde schemer we all wanted to be. Kelly Kapowski made cheerleading look like a legitimate career path. Screech turned social awkwardness into an art form. Today we're breaking down 15 weird facts about the show that owned Saturday mornings and made us believe high school would be way more fun than it actually was. Now, before we dive in, be sure to like and subscribe because it genuinely helps the channel grow. Let's get into it with number 15. Number 15, Screech's robot, Kevin, cost more than most people's cars. Remember Kevin, Screech's walking, talking disaster of a science project? That clunky robot that somehow had more personality than half the supporting characters? Yeah, that wasn't just a prop thrown together by the set department. Kevin was a fully functional robot that cost the production nearly $30,000 in late 1980s money. Think about that for a second. $30,000. That's roughly $70,000 in today's cash, which means Screech was casually rolling around Bayside with the equivalent of a luxury sedan programmed to embarrass him. The irony is beautiful. Here's a show about teenagers with apparently unlimited allowances, and the production spent more on a robot that appeared in maybe 6 episodes than they probably spent on Screech's entire wardrobe for 4 seasons. Dustin Diamond once joked in an interview,
"I've done everything I can. I've eaten a lot of steak. I've enjoyed a lot of Guinness."
That Kevin got better treatment on set than most of the cast, because damaging an expensive robot meant insurance paperwork, while injuring an actor just meant a phone call to their parents. For Gen Xers, Kevin represented the future we were promised, the robot butler era that never quite materialized. For millennials watching reruns in the 2000s, he was hilariously primitive proof of how far technology had come. We went from being impressed by a rolling trash can that could talk to carrying supercomputers in our pockets. But Kevin remains iconic anyway. The overpriced metallic reminder that Saved by the Bell spared no expense when it came to Screech's humiliation. Number 14, the show was almost called When the Bell Rings. Imagine living in a timeline where Saturday mornings weren't saved by anything, where the cultural phenomenon that defined a generation was called When the Bell Rings. It sounds like a documentary about school schedules, not the teen sitcom that would launch 1,000 imitators and make Time Out a legitimate plot device. NBC went back and forth on the title right up until the final marketing push. When the Bell Rings was the frontrunner because, according to producer Peter Engel, it felt more descriptive and educational, like they were making some kind of after-school special about time management instead of a comedy about teenage chaos.
But because he was a couple years younger, but at that time, when you're a teenager, it's a big difference.
The network was genuinely worried that Saved by the Bell sounded too much like a religious program, which is hilarious considering Zach Morris treated moral authority like a suggestion he could scheme his way around. Then someone in marketing had a moment of actual brilliance and pointed out that Saved by the Bell was already an expression everyone knew. It meant last-minute rescue, narrow escape, exactly the kind of barely avoiding consequences energy that defined every single episode. The title change happened so late that early promotional materials actually used both names, creating confusion that probably would have tanked the show if social media had existed to roast them for it. Thank whatever powers govern television naming that they made the switch. When the Bell Rings sounds like a show your parents would force you to watch for educational value. Saved by the Bell sounds like the show you'd sneak out of bed early to catch before anyone else woke up, which is exactly what it became. Number 13. Mr. Belding's office changed size every episode. Ever notice how Mr. Belding's office felt massive one week and claustrophobically small the next? How sometimes his desk faced the door, and sometimes it faced the window, and occasionally the window didn't exist at all. Yeah, that wasn't your imagination or some kind of Bayside architectural magic. That was good old-fashioned budget constraints meeting production reality in the most awkward way possible. The Saved by the Bell set wasn't some sprawling Hollywood facility. It was a relatively compact space where every room had to serve multiple purposes depending on the episode. Mr. Belding's office got reconfigured constantly because they needed that square footage for other scenes. Big pep rally episode, shrink the office, expand the gym, lots of classroom scenes. The office becomes a closet with a desk. Set designer Scott Heineman admitted in a 2005 interview that continuity wasn't exactly the priority. They were cranking out episodes fast enough that they figured most viewers wouldn't notice or care that the principal's workspace was apparently located in some kind of pocket dimension where the laws of physics were negotiable. And honestly, they were right. Most of us were too busy watching Zack scheme his way out of trouble to notice that the filing cabinet teleported between scenes. Number 12, Tiffany Thiessen was only 15 playing a senior. Picture this. You're a high school senior dealing with college applications, prom drama, and whether Zach Morris will finally commit to an actual relationship. You're also 15 years old, and technically not old enough to drive yourself to set. Welcome to Tiffany Thiessen's world when she started playing Kelly Kapowski, Bayside's resident perfect cheerleader who somehow looked 22 while being barely old enough for a learner's permit. The age gaps across the cast were honestly wild. Mark-Paul Gosselaar was 15. Mario Lopez was 15. Elizabeth Berkley was 16. They were all playing 17 and 18-year-olds navigating senior year while being supervised by on-set tutors who made sure they completed actual homework between takes about fake homework. California child labor laws meant shooting schedules had to work around mandatory education hours, which explains why so many episodes felt like they took place in a temporal anomaly where school happened at weird hours. Thiessen has talked about how surreal it was to film scenes about college anxiety and adult relationships, while still needing permission slips for everything. She'd shoot a scene about Kelly worrying about her future, then immediately go study for her own actual algebra test. The disconnect was bizarre, but became normal because everyone on set was living the same strange double life. Number 11. The Max was filmed at two different locations. The Max, Bayside's impossibly cool hangout spot, where teenagers apparently had unlimited money for milkshakes, and the jukebox somehow always played exactly what the moment needed. That magical diner existed in two completely different physical locations, and the switch happened so abruptly that continuity went out the window faster than Zach's promises to be faithful to Kelly. The original Max was filmed at a small restaurant in Burbank during the Good Morning Miss Bliss era and early Saved by the Bell episodes. Cozy, intimate, actually looked like a place teenagers might hang out if they had incredibly understanding parents and no curfew. Then production costs happened. The restaurant wanted more money for location fees. The production budget said absolutely not. And someone had to find a new Max before the next episode started shooting. Enter location number 2, a larger space in North Hollywood